An opening weekend full of drama, late goals, turnarounds and surprise results in the EFL Championship. We are well and truly back for the 25-26 season. Today we're going to look ahead to match week 2 as across Saturday and Sunday all 24 teams are in action for the second time in a championship season. And we are going to predict the scores for all 12 matches, preview the fixtures, and as always, encourage you guys to do exactly the same in the comments below. If you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out in the next recap. And don't forget, you can also play along with us on Fantasy EFL. Join in via the league code in the link in the description. A very quick caveat before we start this one though, we are recording this on Wednesday before the final 4 championship teams have taken part in the first round of the Carabao Cup, so I won't be able to take their scores into consideration from midweek before we do the weekend predictions. That gives you even more chance to beat me this time around. And on that subject, let's go and recap match week 1, because boy oh boy did I have a slow start. Much like last season and much like Sheffield United on Saturday, I had a little bit of a nightmare. I'm sure I'll be back in a swing by match week 4 or 5, but for now, let's run through a long list of people who beat me after I picked up just 5 points, and it wasn't a terrible set of predictions overall. 1 goal out on a lot, and the perfect score just eluding me. I made the same mistake as a lot of last season, which is going a little bit too high scoring on the most part. Let's have a look at those who did beat or match my score though. Level with me on 5, Carl, David and Sven. 1 ahead on 6 are Steve, Sam and Brian. On 7, we've got Adam, Gordon and Hawkins. On 8, Oliveira and Swifty. And then finally, in single figures on 9, we've got Teo, David and Leo. Then we work up into double figures. Rob and Mello, 2 of our regular players with 10. 3 more on 11 in Mitchell, Peter and Nigel, joined by new player Fetisov. And then in second place, Darren with 12 points and a very strong start to the season. But no one could top one of the regulars. Bobby, 14 points in match week 1, which given some of the scorelines is a good effort. You are the winner of match week 1 of our EFL Championship prediction. So well done to Bobby, but can you beat him and me this weekend as we look ahead to match week 2? No Friday night fixture, so we go straight on to Saturday on one of the sides that were involved in a late turnaround in match week 1. It is Derby County versus Coventry City. Derby, well, a very disappointing day at Stoke, having taken the lead for a very tidy Carlton Morris finish, someone that we know very well from his time at Luton Town, followed up by a dramatic late equaliser and then cup win in midweek, which will hopefully boost the confidence a little bit for them. But if we go back to last Saturday, it's a bit of a frustrating one to go ahead and then be level for so long, but to concede 2 goals after the 90th minute, really disappointing. And of course, it was a backs to the wall performance. We've talked a lot about John Eustace, and while he's a very good championship manager and he'll have Derby safe no problem this year, away from home has always been the Achilles heel. He's not very attacking away from home, which potentially is because of the sides he's managed at times. He's not had people who can go and win a game on the counter, but Stoke dominated the game, and in the end, Derby could have lost by more and could have lost it earlier. So you'd argue in the end it was a fair result. On the flip side of that, Coventry City started with a boring 0-0 draw at home to Hull City, where while Coventry were largely in the ascendancy, they had a lot of half chances, they had a lot of the ball. In the end, arguably Hull had the best chance of the match, so it is something that's going to be a worry, but a clean sheet for Coventry, not the worst start in the world. Didn't play brilliantly against Luton in midweek, but nicked that 1-0 win in the cup, and obviously got one of their strikers off the mark for the season, which is important. But it does make this one a pretty tough game to call. Derby County are a very different side at home. We know that very well from last season. John Eustace, much more expansive, relies on getting his points there. And likewise, Coventry, not often as strong on the road, rely on very good form at their home ground. So I do have a little concern that this game might go against the predictions. Coventry obviously going to be in that playoff race this year. I don't expect them to win this one. There's part of me that wants to go for 1-0 to Derby, but I'm going to make the same mistake as I made last week and go for more goals again. Surely, at some point, we're going to get the entertainment. I'm going to go for Derby County to edge this one by 2-1 against Coventry. As we move on to the second early kickoff down at Fratton Park, it is Portsmouth versus Norwich City. Pompey, a solid start away at Oxford, a really important 1-0 win. To be fair, not the worst performance in the world on the road. It was a fairly even game. Both of them created a few half chances. Oxford probably should have scored an equaliser, but in the end, it was a really decent performance on the road, and at the very worst would have got them a point, and they managed to get 3 out of it, which is important on the opening day. Out of the Carabao Cup, which obviously was not a priority for them, but I'm sure the manager would have taken the results that way around. Whereas for Norwich, much the opposite. A good win away at Watford in the Cup in midweek. Josh Sargent still there and still firing, but we've got to talk about that result against Millwall last weekend, because yes, Sargent scored by closing down a clearance from the keeper, but other than that, it was not a good display, was it? Again, you look at the stats and say an even game, but one of those where, again, we talk about it. Norwich had a lot of the ball. They had a lot of the territory, but did they create great chances with it? It seems we've reached a stage where a lot of teams can sit behind the ball and just watch passing for passing's sake. And in the end, Millwall took their chances on the break. They were ruthless, and it became the result we predicted, which I think Norwich City are going to have a slightly tougher year at home where teams come and sit back behind them. For this game, it's really hard to call. Norwich have had generally a pretty awful away record since they got relegated back to the Championship. Portsmouth were incredibly strong at home last year. It saved them with the worst away record in the division. So 3 points on the road, I'm going to back them to get 3 at home as well. And I do think, based on their recent records, this will be one of the more entertaining games. Pompey score for fun at home normally. Norwich are goals galore at both ends. I'm going to go for Portsmouth by 3-1 with Colby Bishop to get at least one of them. The final early kickoff and the first free-to-air live TV game in the UK this year is Wrexham versus West Bromwich Albion. Wrexham, unfortunately for them, got a tough lesson on their return to the Championship, or the second tier of English football, ahead in the 89th minute, behind by the end of the match. A bit of magic from Ryan Manning and a late defensive switch off caused them to lose what was a very good position away at the Saints. What is encouraging though is while they were battered for the most part of the game, gave up chances galore, and we did question Wrexham defensively this year. Was it going to settle straight away? But one of the positives you have to give is they created good chances on the break. Bazunu made an unbelievable save to keep it at 1-0 near the end. And yes, the Saints were chasing the game. But in those matches where Wrexham can get ahead, if they can stay a little more defensively solid, they've got the players to create and take chances. So not the worst performance in the world, and of course, away to one of the strongest sides in the division. But based on that and the whole game in midweek, they've got to find a way to be more defensively solid, because it's definitely going to be their Achilles heel as it stands. And it was the first year in the National League before they started to find their form. So I think we're going to see a transitional year. It's why I didn't put them in the top 6, but encouraging display nonetheless. And for West Brom, a really solid 1-0 win at home to Blackburn. Yes, a late red card for Darnell Furlong. Yes, frustration with the late goal conceded and then losing the penalty shootout in midweek. But they were good at home to Blackburn. But it's the same old question, isn't it? They created more chances. Are they going to take them? We talked about the Hulk coming in up front, who got the assist for the goal. But with Madger again on the bench after a little knock, with Daryl DK picking up yet another injury, that firepower just isn't there consistently, because they can't keep people fit who would normally be in and amongst the goals. So they're going to be relying on Heggerbo and Grant. I'm a little bit torn on what to predict for this one. West Brom have struggled on the road at times for goals, particularly towards the end of last season. Wrexham so far have been, well, pretty exciting at both ends of the pitch. So I'm going to sit on the fence with this one. I don't think it will be as high scoring. I think Wrexham will have a great atmosphere at home this weekend, of course. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. The Championship's favourite scoreline, 1-1 between Wrexham and West Brom. On to the 3 p.m. kickoffs, and we start with Blackburn Rovers versus Birmingham City. Birmingham, a really strong return against Ipswich last Friday night. Probably should have won the game. The late penalty, the handball law, unfortunately, it's the way it is. It's the way that fans hate it. We all hate it, but unfortunately, the referee had no choice but to give a penalty. However, the goal that Kyogo scored in the first half, I'm not ruling that out. I'm sorry, there's not many referees that would be giving that, in my opinion. So incredibly unfortunate not to nick the win, but did really well against a recently relegated side. A strong performance. And to be fair, if they play like that every week, they're going to win a lot more games than they lose. We have got to wait for their midweek fixture, of course. They are one of the 4 sides that haven't been in action as I'm recording this. Unfortunately, though, for Blackburn, they had a bit of a nightmare against Bradford last night. After that opening day defeat at West Brom that we just mentioned, where they were pretty uninspiring, to be 2 down in 5 minutes at home to Bradford from the league below. Yes, they came back into it and created chances, but it will be a frustrating day for them. It's going to be an important game for them, this, but I've just got a feeling that Birmingham are going to be quite strong on the road this year. We said it was their Achilles heel under John Eustace, even when they were doing well 2 years ago. But now I just think this is going to be the time for them. With Damari Gray and Kyogo fit at the minute, they look menacing, they look threatening. I think Birmingham might nick this. I'm not going to go for a thrilling game or scoreline. I'm going to go for Birmingham on the road by 1-0. Let's move on to Ashton Gate and a side that probably produced the performance of the opening weekend, certainly the result of it. It is Bristol City versus Charlton Athletic. Two sides with 3 points on the board. Let's quickly talk about Charlton, who were really strong against Watford without finding a goal. And then finally in the 94th minute, Harvey Nibbs became an instant hero. They should have had it wrapped up by then. There probably should have been a penalty apiece in that game, to be honest with you. Both sides fairly fortunate not to concede one, but it evened itself out. And in the end, Charlton got their deserved victory late on. For Bristol City, a really great result away at Sheffield United. I'm not going to go too overboard yet because the Blades were awful at the back. And to be fair, Bristol City played very similarly to last season away from home. They gave up possession, they sat deep. They just happened to find a side that were terrible defensively. So every time they countered, they looked like scoring. And fair play to them. They were ruthless, they took their chances. A lot of people in the Bristol City manager special said Gerhard Truber has got to get the best out of Scott Twine, and it looks like the early signs are encouraging. Him with Tuma, Mehmeti looking good as well. Really good performance. And the McCrory goal was a lovely counter-attacking team move. So absolutely brilliant performance. Defensively, not as solid as they could have been. I think officially Sheffield United had 3 clear-cut chances. They probably should have scored a couple more. But Bristol City rode their luck away from home defensively at times last season. They looked a real threat going forward there. So encouraging signs. But I'm not going to go overboard based on one result. I think this game's going to be tight. I do think Charlton will take a little while to adapt away from home. So based on that, I think Bristol City have to be favourites. I don't think we're going to be seeing 4s and 5s again. But I'm going to go for the same score that Bristol City won by midweek against MK Dons. I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to Bristol City. But a great start to the season for both. As we reach the halfway mark, we move on to Millwall versus Middlesbrough. Could have called this one the Alfie Doughty derby. Allegedly rejected Middlesbrough and Rob Edwards, his former manager, to go to his new club Millwall, his boyhood one. And it's been a very interesting start to the season for Middlesbrough because after a relatively solid 1-0 win last weekend against Swansea, where they got off the mark in a pretty atrocious game by nicking a goal, it was a terrible match, the worst one in the Championship last weekend, arguably. 4 shots on target between the two teams. Next to nothing in the attacking thirds, but it was a win. And 3 points is what you need at this stage of the season. What was less encouraging for Borough is coming up against the Doncaster side that made 11 changes in midweek and losing 4-0 in the Carabao Cup. Ironically, the stats in terms of shots and on target and that were identical, but it was not a good display defensively. So big problems for Middlesbrough on that front. We've yet to see any sign of encouragement for them in terms of performance. For Millwall, a really good win away at Norwich. We mentioned the fact they were never going to dominate possession, but I thought they played really well. Obviously, the one poor mistake at the back from the keeper for the goal, but otherwise didn't look under much threat of conceding. Looked a ruthless threat on the counter-attack. Great to see attacking players getting off the mark early. I thought it was a really good display, and I said Millwall were my dark horses for the playoffs this year, and I stand by that after the first week. Got a good win at Newport in midweek as well. I think they'll win this one too. Middlesbrough have shown very little going forward so far this season. Millwall always been rock solid at the back at home. When they won most of their games last year, it was by 1-0. I'm going to go for the same here. Millwall 1, Middlesbrough 0. Into the second half, and we start with Preston North End versus Leicester. The visitors, another of those sides who are playing on Wednesday night in the Carabao Cup. However, they made hard work of last weekend because it took Sheffield Wednesday going down to 10 men late on before they could actually get the win. A really important result and obviously absolutely dominated the game. But we discussed this in pre-season, didn't we, in our prediction show? Who's going to put the ball in the net for them? They had 6 clear-cut chances officially. They had 13 shots on target, but they did not take their chances. And this is going to be a problem all year. Are they going to be able to produce the goals that Vardy would have put in before? Yes, 2 assists for El Kanouche. Yes, Ayew looked a threat, but they weren't scoring goals. For Tawu, Mavididi, are they going to hit form? Because yes, Sheffield Wednesday were sitting deep. They were giving up possession as they had to. But Leicester really struggled to take their chances. On another day, that could have been the 5-0 we predicted. In the end, though, going a goal down almost cost them. It took them a long way to get back into it. They've got to avoid going behind in games, or they're going to have those struggles all year. In the end, though, they got the win. The centre-halves came to the rescue, and it's 3 points on the board. So happy days. For Preston, a pretty predictable low-scoring game away at QPR, a 1-1 draw. They have got people who can score goals in that team, though, as Mazic, when he's not getting into trouble on and off the pitch, is someone who can pop up with a goal. Of course, they've got other people to come in now. Matt Smith played 75 minutes. He'll be a threat at times this season, particularly at home if they can get in the ascendancy. I don't know if they'll have enough to beat Leicester, though, because if they do go on the attack, Leicester you would fancy on the counter will create chances. Our big prediction every week with them, though, is going to be, will they take them? I'm going to say they'll take a couple this weekend. I'm going to go for Leicester to win 2-0. As we've said, from defence and midfield, they're probably one of the strongest squads in the Championship, if not the strongest. They just need that goal scorer. I'll back them to have one this weekend with a 2-0 win on the road. Onto the side that Leicester cruelly beat last weekend, it is Sheffield Wednesday versus Stoke City. Sheffield Wednesday, of course, in cup action on Wednesday night, so we can't review that fixture yet. However, a really spirited display against Leicester, and if it weren't for the late red card, maybe they would have clung on. We did discuss this though, didn't we, in pre-season? If they can get ahead in games or stay tight in games, they're going to be all right. I said this from before my experiences with Luton in the 2000s. It's only when you concede that early goal, when you go a goal or two down, then the heads drop, and then you think, we'll preserve our legs for next week and the next fixture. Whereas this one's going to be a bit more tricky. We also have to factor in as well Sheffield Wednesday with 3 games in a week. Other than putting out a youth team tonight, they can't make 11 changes like most other sides have made. They're going to have to play fairly strong. They don't want to be losing 2, 3, 4 players, or they're going to be in big trouble. On another day against a more ruthless side like an Ipswich or Southampton who have got those quality goal scorers, they probably would have lost that game 4, 5 or 6. But if they can get the opening goal and sit behind the ball, I think that's going to make things very interesting this year. Obviously, Shalabar came off early. Bannon got a red card. They can't afford to lose many more, quite literally. So that is my only worry for them going into this weekend. Stoke City have generally been dreadful on the road in recent seasons. However, should be buoyed by that late comeback against Derby County where they finished in style. They've got a real threat on the counter now in the likes of Sorba Thomas and Mabama. Sorba Thomas and Lewis Baker between them. They've got extraordinary set-piece delivery. There were signs of a Mark Robins team there. It was a time where they went and dominated the game, but at home to Derby, it's hard to judge that because Derby were always going to sit back. In this game, it's going to be very interesting to see how it pans out. I'm not expecting many goals. I'm not expecting too much excitement. I just think Stoke will nick it. I'm going to go by 1-0. We're likely to see protests at Hillsborough from those that do turn up and aren't boycotting the ground. And I think that's going to play into the away side's hands. So Stoke City by the odd goal for me. Let's move on to the penultimate game on Saturday, which is Swansea City versus Sheffield United. 2 sides that were beaten last weekend. Sheffield United, of course, in action on Wednesday night. We are doing a live stream of that over on my FM Twitch channel. So you can come and join us for Birmingham, Sheffield United and some retro gaming if you want. However, Sheffield United were the story of last weekend. A 4-1 defeat at home to Bristol City. An atrocious defensive performance. And it's probably what surprised me the most. I mean, nobody in the comments went for a Bristol City win either. But while we expected Bristol City to be good on the counter and to play the way they did, the fact that Sheffield United was so open, we talked about losing the spine of the team, the Souzas, the Armour Hodzic, and boy did it show. They were so poor at the back. They were carved open at will. Not helped by the fact they didn't take their chances at the other end much as well. It is a really, really difficult day for Sheffield United. They're a side that under Ruben Selles, the one thing I expected them to be was solid. I didn't know if they'd be as convincing going forwards, but they've lost key players and it showed in that game. It's going to be a very, very tough time for Selles because a few fans already very much against him after that one. Needs a big week here to recover. For Swansea, a 1-0 defeat at Middlesbrough in that terrible game we mentioned earlier. They created next to nothing. To be fair, they didn't give up much either, but they're going to have to create a lot more than that if they want to pick up points this year. They did get a win late on in the cup against Crawley. Ethan Galbraith got off the mark late on, which is nice as well, but we're going to need to see a little bit more from them moving forward. I really don't know how to call this after the opening weekend. You would expect Swansea to be a bit more expansive at home, or do they just sit back and say, we know if we get a chance to break against Sheffield United, we're going to score? Or do Sheffield United go for something completely different? I don't know. Maybe they try and be a bit more cautious on the road and maybe Ruben Selles reverts to type. I'm going to sit on the fence with this one because I have no idea what to go for. I don't see many clean sheets about on the Sheffield United front on that evidence. I'm going to go for 1 goal apiece here. The final game on Saturday is a side that had late heartbreak again. It is Watford versus Queen's Park Rangers. Of course, Watford did lose late on in the 94th minute to Charlton, but you can't say it wasn't deserved. As I mentioned, probably should have been a penalty apiece for each side, but 1 shot on target overall, not much creativity from open play, and Charlton could have scored a couple more. Very worrying signs for the new head coach. And of course, suggestions that they're continuing where they left off at the end of last season, despite a new manager and some new players. For QPR, again, disappointing in the cup away at Plymouth, where they threw away a 2-goal lead in the second half. Have to question the attitude at that point there. Julian Stefan did get his first league point against Preston, though. Relied on an own goal. Again, one of those sides we've talked about for so long, about where are the goals going to come from. They've not got that regular goal scorer. And unfortunately, it showed yet again against Preston. So that's my concern going into this weekend. Watford generally had a very good home record last season, although it did dwindle a little at the end of the campaign. Neither of the sides have got regular goal scorers or produce many at the moment. I'm going to have to sit on the fence with a 0-0 here. I know it's a bold call, but there weren't that many goals in some of the games last weekend, and I'll go for this one to be my goalless draw. We finish off with 2 games on Sunday, and it starts with the TV game at lunchtime. The 2 promotion favourites with the bookmakers, our top 2 in a prediction show pre-season. It is Ipswich Town versus Southampton. And very interesting starts for the season for both. Southampton looked like they were going to be incredibly frustrated against Wrexham, but late magic from Ryan Manning, a late set piece, and of course, popping up at the back post, Jack Stevens in the 96th minute. You can't accuse them of not going for it. They created enough chances to win 2 or 3 games, but my concern is defensively. We talked about they lost Bednarek, Walker-Peters, who were crucial last time they were here. Yes, they started the season slowly then as well defensively, conceded 4 or 5 a few times under Russell Martin, but they should have been further behind. Bazunu made a wonder save to stop it being 2. It does leave a few questions unanswered defensively when it comes to Southampton. They then got a 1-0 win away in the cup in midweek though, so very important that they start with wins to build momentum, to build confidence after a dreary Premier League season where they barely won a game. For Ipswich, as we mentioned earlier, incredibly fortunate to get that point away at Birmingham City. They were second best for the most part. The late penalty, while by the letter of the law, it probably is a penalty. Most football fans don't want to see it. And to be honest, the goal that was disallowed, it's never a foul really, is it? But Ipswich, 1 shot on target, which is a 95th minute penalty. They score it, they pick up a point, and after a tough away day, which will be one of the toughest this season, they picked up a point. And I mentioned it. People forget 2 years ago, they were great going forward in the home games. Away from home, they were largely relying on a solid defensive base, and they got the draw. They've gone out to Bromley in the cup in midweek on penalties, so they're going to have to trim the squad if they want to keep people happy. However, I do back them to be a very different side at home. Southampton were open at the back, Ipswich generally very aggressive at Portman Road, and I think this will be the thriller of the weekend. I hope it delivers as a fixture. I'm expecting a lot from it. I'm going to go for Ipswich to win a thriller by 3-2 against Southampton. And the final game, the 3 p.m. kickoff on Sunday, is Hull City versus Oxford United. A lot of people had one or both of these sides in their bottom 3 this year. Hull City, you've got to say, looked fairly solid away at Coventry last weekend. Yes, Coventry didn't have that person to put the ball in the back of the net, but Hull sat in a shape they knew what they wanted to be, and they created the best chance of the match in the end. However, the owner has criticised and sacked Sellers and Rossignol for not being aggressive enough. If Hull produced that sort of performance for the next 4, 5 or 6 weeks, I'm not sure he lasts long either. It's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out. Any other club, you would say a good point on the road, a solid start, but given what other managers have been sacked for, you feel there's going to have to be a different approach. There certainly was at Wrexham in the cup in midweek, a 3-3 draw, a crazy game, somehow found a way to go out, dominated the ball, created chances. So more encouraging signs. But as we mentioned with Hull, they've done a lot of their transfer work quite late on and continue to do so. So it's going to be a bit of a slower start to the season, I think, for them. For Oxford, very disappointing at home to Portsmouth. Yes, a big miss. It should have been a 1-1 draw. However, wasn't the best performance in the world, and they relied so much on their home form last year. You do worry about them losing at home to sides who are expected to be in the bottom half. Going away to Hull, they're facing another one of those now. They're going to have to sit behind the ball and maybe try and hit Hull on the counter, put the onus on them to attack them. They got that win against Colchester in midweek, so at least they're off and running for the season overall. Again, though, didn't create bundles of clear-cut chances, so something Gary Rowett's going to have to improve. He's brought in young strikers that are going to take time to gel and find their form. I don't know where to go with this one. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game for sure. I don't know whether to back Hull to get one at home or Oxford to sneak a draw playing defensively. I think Hull might nick it. My instincts say go for the home side here. So I'm going to go for an ugly 1-0 home win to finish off our Match Week 2 predictions. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for this weekend. Just two sides to score 3 goals both at home. Ipswich in Sunday's thriller and Portsmouth in the early game on Saturday. I've gone for 3 teams to win away from home and keep a clean sheet in Birmingham, Leicester and Stoke. And I've also gone for a bold 0-0 draw between Watford and Queen's Park Rangers, in addition to 2 Championship's favourite scorelines. Those are just my predictions for Match Week 2 though. Do you agree with me or disagree? Let us know in the comments below. Give us your predictions for Match Week 2. And of course, if you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out in the next recap when we return at this time next week. A couple of reminders, as I mentioned, we are live tonight on the Load FM Twitch channel. We're going to be watching Birmingham Sheffield United. It is the ITV game in the Carabao Cup free to air. So you can come and join us for that and for some retro gaming. You can also check out our pre-season predictions playlist if you haven't seen it already. All 3 EFL leagues, the National League and the Irish Premiership. Come and get involved with those. It's not too late. And join our Fantasy EFL if you want to go head-to-head with us over there too. If you enjoyed this video, please do chuck a thumbs up on it, subscribe and turn that notification bell on as always. We've got League One shorts coming tomorrow and on Sunday ahead of the midweek fixtures, so come and get involved with those as well. Good luck to your teams this weekend, and we'll see you again at the same time next week for Match Week 3 of this championship season.